My parents took all my inheritance and threw me out when I turned 18. Now that I'm a self-made millionaire, they're on their knees pleading for forgiveness. I'm Ethan, and I discovered long ago that those who should love you unconditionally often put a hefty price tag on their affection. I grew up in a house that resembled a museum, with white carpets, marble statues, and costly art adorning the walls. My parents, Richard and Cynthia, were fixated on appearances. To everyone else, they were the ideal couple, hosting extravagant parties, driving fancy cars, and wearing designer outfits. But behind closed doors, they were cruel. They didn't love me, they merely tolerated me. I was just an accessory in their perfect life, like a handbag or a watch. They showcased me when I excelled but ignored me when I faltered. The only person who truly loved me was my grandfather, Arthur. He was my father's father, but despised his own son. Arthur was a self-made man who began with one grocery store and built a real estate empire. He saw through my parents' shallow greed. They're vultures, Ethan, he told me once while we fished at his cabin. They wait for things to die so they can pick the bones clean. Don't be like them. Build your own table. I took his words to heart. When I was 17, Arthur passed away from a sudden heart attack, and it devastated me. He was my only supporter. My parents, however, didn't mourn. They were busy calculating the value of his estate. A week later, when the will was read, they expected everything, but Arthur had the last laugh. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, read the will in our living room. To my son Richard and his wife Cynthia, I leave the amount of $1 each. You've spent enough of my money while I was alive. My father's face turned red, and my mother gasped, clutching her pearls. Mr. Sterling then smiled at me, and continued to my grandson Ethan, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the investment portfolio, properties, and cash savings, totaling around $10 million. This will be held in a trust until his 18th birthday. My parents went wild, screaming at the lawyer, at my grandfather's body, and at me. You manipulated him, my father yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. You poisoned his mind against us. I just loved him, I replied quietly. For the next 6 months until I turned 18, my life was a nightmare. My parents were sweet one moment and fiercely angry the next. They tried to persuade me to sign documents transferring the rights to them for safekeeping, but Mr. Sterling had warned me against signing anything. When my 18th birthday finally came, I expected a fight, but instead, I woke up to a pancake breakfast. Happy birthday, son, my dad said brightly. We're so proud of you. We have a surprise, my mom added. We know we've been tough on you. We want to make it right and send you on a backpacking trip through Europe, just like you always wanted. I was suspicious but still hopeful. Yay? I asked. Yes, Dad replied. But first, we need to take care of the boring legal stuff with the trust. Mr. Sterling is out of town, so his partner sent over the paperwork to fully transfer the funds into your name. We just need you to sign so we can open your bank account. He set a stack of papers on the table. Sign here, here, and here, he said, flipping through the pages quickly. Standard stuff. Power of attorney for emergencies, asset management, and so on. I glanced at the papers, filled with legal language. Shouldn't I read these? I asked. Ethan, my mother said, her voice shaky. Don't you trust us? We're your parents, trying to give you a gift. If you don't sign, the funds will be tied up in probate for years. Do you want to lose your inheritance? I felt pressured and guilty, just wanting it to be over. I signed my life away. 2 hours later, my father picked up the papers, grinning. It wasn't a pleasant grin, it was the smile of a predator. Pack your bags, he said. For Europe? I asked. No, he laughed. For the street. What? I exclaimed. You just signed over full control of the trust to us, he said, waving the documents. You granted us irrevocable power of attorney and transferred the assets to the family company we own. The money is ours now. You can't do that. I stammered. We just did, my mother chimed in, sipping her coffee. Arthur was a senile old fool. That money belongs to the family, not a child. And since you're 18 now, you're a legal adult. We have no obligation to house you. My father grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door, throwing me onto the porch. My mother tossed a duffel bag with a few of my clothes after me. Good luck in the real world, Ethan, my father said. Don't come back. They slammed the door, and I heard the lock click. I stood there, stunned. I had $10 million at 9 a.m., and by 11 a.m., I was homeless with $50 in my pocket. I tried to contest it, and went to Mr. Sterling. He looked at the copies of what I signed and shook his head. Ethan, this is solid, he said. You signed a voluntary gift deed. You were of legal age. Unless you can prove coercion, it's your word against theirs. The money is gone. I was devastated but remembered Arthur's words, build your own table. The next 10 years were tough. I didn't go to Europe. I spent 6 months in a shelter, washed dishes at a diner, and ate leftovers from customers' plates. But I was determined. I spent every free moment at the library, teaching myself to code and learning software engineering. I was hungry, both literally and figuratively. I created a small app to help restaurants manage their inventory and reduce food waste, selling it for $50,000. I used that money to start a cybersecurity firm, working 20 hours a day, avoiding dating and partying. By the time I was 25, my company, Ironclad Security, was valued at $5 million. At 28, I sold it to a major tech company for $120 million, becoming a billionaire. I bought a penthouse and a McLaren, treating myself but keeping a low profile. Professionally, I went by Ethan Cole. I never spoke to my parents and blocked their numbers years ago, assuming they lived lavishly off my grandfather's money. But karma is slow. About 6 months ago, I got a notification from my private investigator, whom I hired to keep tabs on them. The report shocked me. They had squandered it all, $10 million in 10 years. They made poor investments, and my father, thinking he was a stock market genius, wasn't. They bought vacation homes they couldn't afford and threw expensive parties. They even fell victim to a Ponzi scheme that wiped out their remaining cash. They were in debt, with the bank foreclosing on the family home, the museum I grew up in. They were selling their furniture for food. I read the report and smiled. It was time. I didn't just want to watch them fail. I wanted to be the one to deliver the eviction notice. I set up a shell company called Phoenix Holdings and contacted the bank holding their mortgage. It was a distressed asset, and they were eager to sell the debt to a private investor. I bought their mortgage, effectively becoming their landlord and bank. Then I waited for the inevitable. They missed a payment, and I sent a notice of default. Soon, my mother reached out not to Ethan Cole, the millionaire, but to Ethan, her son. She found my number through a distant aunt. "Ethan," she sobbed. "Is that you?" "Hello, Cynthia," I replied coldly. "Please don't call me that." "I'm your mother," she cried. "We're in trouble. We made mistakes. We miss you so much. We want to see you." "You kicked me out 10 years ago," I reminded her. "We were trying to teach you a lesson," she lied. "And look, it worked. We heard you're doing well. We're so proud." "What do you want?" I asked. "We're losing the house," she whispered. "Your grandfather's house. We have nowhere to go. Can we meet for dinner?" I knew exactly what this was, a plea for help. "Fine," I said. "I'll come to the house on Friday at 7 p.m. That Friday, I prepared like I was going into battle. I drove my McLaren to the old house, which was overgrown and peeling. The Mercedes was gone, replaced by a rusty sedan. My parents opened the door, looking aged. My father was no longer arrogant. Anxiety replaced it. My mother's designer clothes were now worn and outdated. "Ethan," she attempted to hug me, but I stepped back. "Let's eat," I said. They served a meager pot roast at the dining table, the same one where I signed my life away. "Ethan," my father started, hands trembling. "We're in a bad spot. The economy, bad luck. We lost the money." "You stole it," I corrected him. "We borrowed it," he stammered. "And we intended to pay it back. But now the bank is kicking us out next week. We're old, Ethan. We can't survive on the streets." "It's tough on the streets," I replied, taking a sip of water. They flinched. "We're begging you," my mother said, kneeling on the dirty floor. "Please, you have money now. Pay off the mortgage. Save us. We'll do anything. We'll be better parents." "Anything?" I asked. "Anything," my father echoed, also kneeling. "Please, son, forgive us." I looked at them, two broken, greedy people begging for mercy from the son they discarded. "I can help," I said, and their faces lit up with hope. "I can pay off the debt," I continued, "but I need you to sign something first." I took out a stack of papers from my briefcase. "What's this?" my father asked. "It's an agreement," I explained. "I'll pay off the entire mortgage today, but you have to sign over the deed to the house to me. You can live here rent-free for 1 month while you find a new place, but the house becomes mine." "But then we still lose the house," my mother cried. "You won't have a foreclosure on your record," I replied. "And you get a month to plan. Otherwise, the sheriff comes on Monday." "And do we get any money?" my father asked, his greed still evident. "I'll give you $10,000 cash to start over," I said. $10,000, a small amount compared to the $10 million they took. "We'll sign," my father said quickly. "Read it?" I insisted. "No need," he said, eager for the check. "We trust you." He signed. My mother signed. I checked the signatures, then stood up. "Thank you," I said. "So, you'll pay the bank?" my father asked, extending his hand for the check. "I don't need to pay the bank," I replied. "What?" "I am the bank," I smiled. "I bought your mortgage 3 months ago through my holding company. You didn't just sign the house over to me. You signed a voluntary surrender of possession." I pointed to the last page they hadn't read. "This clause states that the $10,000 payment depends on the property being vacated immediately, as in tonight." "What?" my mother screamed. "You said a month." "I lied," I said. "Just like you lied about Europe." "You can't do this," my father shouted, standing up. "We're your parents, and I'm the owner of this property," I replied. "You are trespassing." I pulled out my phone and texted my security team, who were waiting down the street. "They're here," I said. 2 large men approached. "They'll help you pack. You have 1 hour. Whatever isn't in the car in 60 minutes goes in the dumpster." "Ethan, please," my mother wailed, grabbing my leg. "Don't do this. We love you." I looked down at her. "No, you don't," I said. "And frankly, I don't care." I walked out to the porch and sat on the swing, watching as my security team escorted them out. I saw them dragging trash bags of clothes to their old car, crying and blaming each other for their failures. My father approached me one last time. "You're a cruel bastard," he spat. "I learned from the best," I replied. They drove away into the night, and I walked back into the house. It was silent, smelling of dust and desperation. I went to the fireplace, looking at my grandfather's portrait still hanging there. They hadn't sold it because it had no worth to anyone but me. I built my own table. "Grandpa," I whispered. The next day, I hired a crew to clear the house and donated everything inside to a charity shelter. I didn't move in, instead, I put the house on the market. A month later, I sold it for a profit. I took that profit, along with the $10,000 I never gave them, and started a scholarship fund for kids in the foster system who age out at 18 with nowhere to go. As for my parents, I heard they're living in a motel nearby. My father works as a greeter at Walmart, and my mother cleans houses, just like the people she once looked down on. They occasionally try to call me from different numbers. I always answer, just to hear them plead for a moment, before I hang up and block them. It's petty and dark, but after 10 years of struggling, revenge tastes like the finest meal I've ever had.